You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, author, speaker, mentor, and guide. I'm here today to discuss living life after adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to your joy, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast. Today, we have Shawn on the podcast. Shawn is a recently retired career firefighter. He attended over 10,000 emergency incidents as a first responder and eventually developed severe PTSD. He underwent a transformational recovery and became an advocate and mentor for emergency service workers and others suffering from mental trauma. Shawn's passion is visual art, in particular painting and drawing as a form of therapy. Shawn loves sports and being outdoors. He lives with his wife Helen in beautiful Port Stephens, Australia, where they enjoy a busy social life with friends and family. This episode was jaw-dropping. You will absolutely get so much out of it, as I have. And I just want to thank Shawn for coming on the podcast and talking about mental health, because not always is it easy to find men who are willing to talk about mental health. And here Shawn is, a pioneer, making a huge difference for people in the first responder experience and sharing his knowledge and helping other people to feel seen. So I am looking so forward to you hearing this podcast today, and I hope you get out of it as much as I have, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, let's get started. Hello, Shawn. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Christine. My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm just looking forward to our conversation. It's so rare that I'm able to have males on the podcast, so I'm really looking forward to a conversation about mental health and, who Shawn is and really how you went through your own journey. Now, I'm curious, where in the world are you tuning in from?
Well, Australia, and I live in a beautiful part of the East Coast called Port Stephens that I moved to recently with my wife, Helen. But a lot of what we'll talk about is about my 35-year career in Canberra, the nation's capital,
Okay.
as a career firefighter, which is where I lived and raised my family. And my first marriage was down there, and that was a big move to move up here. And I love the spot where we are. So very fortunate.
Okay. Well, that is the subject matter, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about working as a firefighter. When you said career in firefighting, is that
Yeah.
what you said? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me
So
a little bit about that journey.
so I guess every little boy wants to be an astronaut or a fireman or something like that. And I was inspired by a neighbour who was a fireman. And I was into sport and fitness, and I liked adventures and activity like that. So when I was around 14 years old, I started to think about what I'd like to do. And I thought, wow, that'd be really exciting, really good fun. So quite fortunate from that age, I felt a direction towards doing something like that. I knew I liked doing something in the community, something exciting. So I was fortunate enough to very hard to get into as a career firefighter, as a professional firefighter. It's a very competitive process to get into. So I had 3 attempts and I was able to join. I was accepted when I was 19 years old. So I was quite young, and 20 when I started. And in the ACT in Canberra, where we're from, it's a multifaceted service. So we do obviously fight, in the built up in the city area, we fight fires, but We have bushfires around there, or brush fires, forest fires, as you might call them in North America. So we have equipment and training for those, but we also do all of the other emergency service style work. So storm damage, major disaster recovery, industrial rescue, animal rescue, remote area rescue, hazardous materials, medical assists. So it's a very, very multifaceted role.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the job. I really love the job. Loved it, still do. So it's nice after retiring only a few months ago to say after 35 years, I had a career that I really enjoyed, was very fulfilling. And yeah, not many people get to say that. They say if you like what you do, you don't work a day in your life. So
As they say.
I was pretty lucky.
Excellent. Well, I am so glad to hear that. I know that not every job is perfect by any means, but when you can find one that you love, that you don't wake up dreading, that is a big, big deal.
It
Now,
sure is.
yeah, certainly from our conversations, I've got a little bit of an idea here of how it impacted you. However, there was some difficult moments in firefighting. Can you let us in a little bit on those?
Yeah. I got I did a lot of things. I did exchanges to other brigades. I worked in other cities, had a lot of great experiences. And I liked being busy. I liked being in busy areas where lots of things were happening. So I accumulated quite a high number of attendances to emergency incidents. And when I joined, there were still paper records. There wasn't even computers on station. So they estimate that I've been between 9 and 12,000 emergency incidents over my career, up until 2017, when I quite suddenly got ill and was diagnosed with PTSD. So that's 27 years into my career. I've been an officer since 2002, so I've been an officer for about 15 years. So I was in charge of troops, led major incidents, went on deployments, things like that. So it was a high intensity job. I was good at the job. I enjoyed the job, but I was also, I think, probably trying to be the best husband I could be, the best father I could be, the best friend I could be, the best boss I could be, the best son I could be, as well as all of the other things going in life. So
Mhm.
I realised I started to drop off things that were good for me as an individual. So I stopped doing sport that I liked. I stopped creative endeavours, going to places and doing things, socialising with people I wanted to, because I almost developed this guilt that that's time I should be putting into doing better at those other things that I wanted to do. And then in 2017, I felt like I was getting sick. I felt like I was getting a virus, a physical reaction. So I was sweating, trembling, nauseous. This happened over the course of 2 days.
Wow.
I thought, oh, yeah, something. So in hindsight, in the lead up to this, I'd gained a bit of weight. I'd been lethargic. I was tired. But, what do we all do? Oh, it's just the stress of modern life. I've got a child at university, one in his senior years, and my wife's got a busy job. I'm helping with my parents. I've got a property at home. I've got one at the coast that I maintain and I travel to look after. And I was busy, plus all of my work commitments. So like just the stress, just every day running down like everybody else, I'm getting some sort of virus.
Right.
And over the course of the weekend, I went from that to I was in the hospital looking at going into the psych ward. I'd had suicidal thoughts, and it was that sudden. No warning,
Wow.
no indication. To being in my own home with an intervention team there, like a critical incident mental health team from the hospital, there with my wife, a couple of really good friends, a work colleague, wondering what they're going to do with me. The lights were on, but nobody was home. I just absolutely collapsed. Um, so that was, yeah, earth shattering, life changing.
No kidding. I can't imagine this sudden feeling that is all of a sudden, you're trucking along and like you said, just kind of this in this unfortunate version of what is mainstream society, which is kind of this, you're stressed to the nines, but you're handling it. Um,
It's just an
and
expectation. Yeah.
well, it's a funny one, but it's the truth. And but then to all of a sudden have it catch up with you is so interesting, and I think it speaks to our ability of as humans to really kind of push it down and not worry about it, and it's fine, everything's good, I can handle it. And then the body has a way of saying, no, you've filled way too many things in this cabinet and I'm gonna blow. That was your body's way of really regulating itself after years and years of perhaps maybe not dealing with some of those things that you had gone through. Am I in the right track there?
You're on. You're dead on point. Exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, putting things down. We talk about recognizing the signs, acting early, taking action. That only happens to other people. Doesn't happen to me. But we all
Mhm.
think that way. That's somebody else. So we tend to, and it's incremental. There's little bits and pieces, little things that you go, oh, that doesn't feel right. Get over it, move on, princess. That sort of thing. Particularly with
Mhm.
men.
Yes,
Yeah,
certainly.
and look, I said to Helen when I was talking about this, I don't want to divide it down gender lines because um, we all have such different levels of resilience. We all have such different levels of exposures. We all have so many different things. Something that upsets me is not going to upset you. Something that triggers you, I'm going to have no reaction to. So it's very personal.
I agree.
Um, so yes, ignoring things that in hindsight were red flags, or dealing with them because I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. I'm the commander of a fire station. I'm expected to deal with those things.
Right.
Um, so that build up and exactly what you said, the body then had a physiological response. The body said, "Well, if your mental, what's going on, your brain's not working. We'll make you tremble. We'll make you nauseous. We'll make you sweat."
Wow.
And like I said, it was so sudden. I genuinely thought I was catching a virus. I thought, "Oh, what is this? Have I got a flu or something?" Sweating
Mhm.
at night, waking up sheets wet. In just really, as you say, the body pulled out all the stops and said, "Right, you're going to pay attention, and you're paying attention today."
Right.
Um, so that's how it came down on me.
Okay. Okay. That must have been what I would use as a word is scary. Very scary.
Yeah, I scary, and I was dumbfounded. I was going. Once I realised what was happening, I'd been a critical incident stress contact officer. I'd done courses. I knew the signs, and I go, "Oh hell, I know what's happening to me. Oh dear." But it was such a slip over a day or two. Um, my ex-wife described it as it was your eyes, but it wasn't you behind them.
Mm.
It was like you
Okay.
checked out. It was your body physically, but there was no connecting with you. Wherever you were, it wasn't behind those eyes. And
In crisis.
yeah, and look, my best friend, he's a very high-ranking police officer, and his wife is a clinical psychologist, and they lived a few doors up from us.
Mhm.
He took me down to the hospital. He sat with me, and he's given the same description. He said, "I've never seen a chink in your armour," and he said, "And then I'm seeing this guy that I don't recognise. So I know it's you, but it's not you." So to hear those comments later down the track, when I review what happened to me, it's really confronting. But yeah, I had no control over it, but I knew what was happening to me, if that makes sense. I knew I was in trouble.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for giving us a glimpse into what would have been a really scary few days. What was the follow up and fallout from that?
Well, straight up, right. everybody knew I was in serious trouble. So medication immediately, and then trying to get some treatment in place. I had a fantastic GP.
Mhm.
My wife's my, my friend's wife, being a clinical psychologist, pointed me in the direction of excellent help.
Excellent.
And so functioning was the first thing, eating properly. I was walking around in circles. I was pacing around and around in circles, like you'd see in a movie, like someone in a mental facility in my own home. I could only imagine what that was like for my wife and my children seeing me that way. But
Certainly.
I literally just kept wanting to go back to bed and pull the covers over my head and close my eyes and go to sleep so the pain had stopped. It was physical throbbing in the head. So strong medication initially to bring that down. And I'm talking weeks into months. So you take those medications, they don't work like that. Some can make you sleep,
Yep.
um,
Mhm.
but the longer term medications take weeks to start to have an effect. So just strategies for, again, keeping myself eating well, sleeping, trying to sleep properly, trying to do some exercise, and then trying to work out what's happening with your career and your family. But I guess if that answers that part of the question,
Mhm.
the thing that I've got to add about my situation was, how fortunate I was in a lot of ways, because people get PTSD from all sorts of things. There's so many variants of it.
Mhm.
But when you've been a career firefighter in 10,000 incidents, there's no question about what it is. There's no one going, oh, has he really got PTSD? So you don't have that self doubt. And people tend to go, well, that's expected from what you've been through. So there's a
Right.
little bit of a liberation there for you that other people might not have if it's from trauma that other people haven't seen or don't understand. Whereas you go to a military person who's been in theatre or a firefighter, they go, well, the horrific things you deal with, no wonder. So there wasn't that sense of, oh, is this what I've got or haven't I? Do people believe me? Particularly for guys, do they think that I'm bunging it on, as we said? Do they think I'm pretending, or do they think I'm making this up? So there was none of that for me. The organisation, again, this is quite unusual. You will hear with a lot of people that they weren't well supported. I had the best support from my workplace. I think there's a lot more focus on it now. Had it happened to me even 2 years before, I might not have got the support that I got. Friends and family. My family, were so supportive, so helpful, and my friends. And then following on from that, accessing the best treatment, my treating professionals, I was able to access the best. So I had a lot of things working in my favour, as well as I think was something that I sort of say to people is I've always been a glass half full sort of person. So I think I'd never suffered depression. So my PTSD was all about anxiety, not necessarily stress and depression, but anxiety was the big ticker in mine. So I knew in my heart of hearts, and I think people knew about me, that my natural disposition is positivity, that restoring myself to that was possible because that was my nature, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot further for people to go if they are naturally a you know less positive person, if they're naturally somebody who thinks the worst rather than the best. We can't help with who we are, but I think that worked in my favour. So I had a lot of pieces drop into the slots that then allowed me to take the steps I needed to step.
I can hear your optimism and your gratitude towards how things came together. Certainly, that was my first thought. Is this man's an optimist, and I think that it takes you a long way when you go through a trauma, um, to have the glasses half full idea about the world, because there's two different ways to take an experience like this. There's one where you take it and you crumble, and you block your future. And there's one where you take it and you use it to influence your future, right? And it sounds to me like you are the latter.
Yeah, and it still fascinates me. I still think about this often about where that drive comes from. It's easy for me to talk about it, and I think my example for people that may be like me, it can be helpful, but I can't imagine what it would be like if you're a different type of personality. Now you've had this massive trauma and a collapse. You're coming from your weakest, lowest point. You you've not only got to restore yourself back to who you were, but are you going to build on it and improve it and try and change your attitude? So hard enough, even if you don't have a trauma, and say, I recognize that I've got negative thoughts about things, unhelpful thoughts about things. I need to change that. You haven't had a breakdown. There's a lot of work to do that. But if you've had a breakdown, the best that you can aim for is to try and restore yourself to how you were, but then you still might have issues to deal with around your approach to life, your outlook. So my position that I tried to restore to was I used to say I want to be better than pre-injury condition, because in the lead up I wasn't myself. So it's easy to say on that day, March the 23rd, I think it was, 2017, I hit rock bottom. But obviously I wasn't the person I was maybe 6 to 12 months leading up to that. There was a gradual decline. So I wanted to be who I was when I was happier 12 months earlier, when I was functioning better 12 months earlier. So I had a point in time. I said, well, I know I can achieve that because I've been there. I've been to that point. I've got to get back there. If you've never been to that point, if you've never had that attitude, bigger brains than mine, I've got to work out how to get to that. So that's not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is, getting yourself back to who you were, and then if working on those things, and when you're in a healthier spot.
Mm. Something I refer to often is you can have your experience make you better or bitter. And
Yep.
certainly that's what I'm seeing here. How do you feel that you have made positive changes in your life? How has this influenced you in a positive way, as a result of the breakdown?
I'm a simple person, so I try and distill things down to simple concepts. And when I think of the word yes, saying yes instead of no, that then elicits thoughts in me about why I'm like that. Why do I say yes to something that before I would have said no to? It's because I recognised that things needed to change. I needed to look after myself better. I needed to say yes to things that were good for me. And I needed to say no or to change things that led to my breakdown. So I think we very easily, it's easy to say, oh no, we overestimate how bad things are going to be, and we underestimate our ability to cope with them.
So true.
So I needed to start to not worry about things that probably weren't going to happen. Catastrophizing is a word they use. What-ifizing is a word that they use. What if? Well, that's only, the past is gone. The past doesn't exist. Neither does the future. It's living in the present. And in the present, I say yes to things. And if it's not going to work out, I'll work that out along the way. Because if you say no straight away, it won't happen. It's a stopper. It's a blocker. It stops everything. So do you want to go for a coffee? No, I'm a bit busy. Or do you want to go for a coffee? Yeah, okay. And then you look at your schedule and go, oh, I'm busy, I'm going to squeeze. But when you go there, when you do those things, you grow. You get something out of that. Oh, I'm glad I went. I didn't expect that. Oh, I've learned something new. I've met somebody. So that's a physical action, a step that you can take, and it's as simple as the word yes.
Mm.
Don't say no straight away, say yes straight away. And then if it's going to be no, you can change that later. But if you say no straight away, you're dead in the water. So that was the biggest thing. But it took a lot of work to get there too. It's not just imagining that. And there's a process to that, which I can tell you about if you're interested in how the work to get to that point went.
That would be my next question, actually. What was some of the work that you did to get to that point?
So, and this is advice for anybody, you've got to have a group of treating professionals that you really believe in, that you really trust. There's flash people with nice premises. There's people with qualifications that are not soundly tested, let's say. Whatever your comfort zone is, whatever you truly believe is real, is what you need to go with, because that way you can commit. I'm the sort of person, if I don't believe the author, if I don't trust the science, if I don't think I'm connecting with the person, or they don't have an idea of what my life's like, I've always got that doubt in the back of my mind, am I doing the right thing? So once I had a really good psychologist, and I believed in, for me, it was cognitive behavioural therapy, following some exposure therapy. I said to him, I want to get better. I said, I don't care how hard it is, I just want the best treatment, and I will give it my all. So the first treatment that they did for me was very difficult and not for everybody. So I had to go into the therapy session. It wasn't hypnosis, I was just in a very relaxed state. And in the first person, I had to walk through a couple of incidents that had really set me off. Medical assists with death and things like that. And I had to recount them in the first person, as though, and in the, if I was there. So the psych would ask me about smells, tastes, sounds, those senses that are really heightened when you're in a situation. And he recorded those sessions. And then I had to go between sessions for the week and listen to them 2 or 3 times a day, listen to it. And so be in that moment. So it's a form of exposure therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that sort of clinical sort of side had been done, I found a very, very good counselling psychologist who was very much across the cognitive behaviour therapy approach. And that was being cognizant, being aware of how you tick, how you reacted to things emotionally, and then gave you practical exercises to build your toolkit to deal with those things, so that when you're in those situations and feeling that way, you could reach into that kit and go, okay, I need to slow things down. I need to do diaphragmatic breathing, or I jotted some of them down here. These different tools, and again, not every tool was right for me. I responded really well to some things, other things I didn't. That doesn't work for me. I don't want to be sitting in a shopping centre going more because I'm too self-conscious. But I learned things that worked for me.
Right.
So again, being able to commit to believe in the therapy that I was undertaking and commit to it and actually doing the work. And that's the big thing. You've got to do the work. It's one thing to go. I use the example of someone was talking to me this morning. My wife just joined me up at the gym. I said, but I've actually got to go and do the exercises, don't I? I'm not just having a gym membership's not going to build my muscles up. I've got to go and hurt. I've got to go and feel some pain. I've got to commit some time to this. I've got to do other things around this. I've got to eat well. I've got to sleep well. I've got to look after myself physically for this to have a benefit. And it's the same with mental health. Go and sit in the psych's office and spill in your guts for an hour. It feels good, but then you've got to go away and do your work.
Right.
Yeah. So I was young enough and I'd worked hard enough and long enough to, I want another phase in my life. This isn't it for me, so or what have I got to do to fix this? What have I got to do to grow and get better? Believing in it and making the commitment and actually doing it and it's tough when you're at your lowest point, when you've got no motivation, you've got no energy, you think you're done. You might not have friends and family that can support you and help you drive along, because you're gonna slip, you're gonna want to give up and do that. So there's no quick fix, there's no silver bullet answer for those things. You've got to expect to have tough times. You've got to expect to not want to do it. But you just got to keep that vision of how you want your life to be as your guiding light, as that's where I want to be. To the exclusion of everything else, that's the important thing. And another thing I learned, Christine, was self-compassion. I think that was a big thing for me. Don't be so hard on yourself. Now when you're an athlete, when you're a boss, when you're a dad, when you're a husband, when you're whatever, you push yourself to do better, to be the best that you can. It's okay to miss. It's okay to fail. It's okay to have a few days off. It's okay to say that didn't work, to make a mistake, and forgive yourself for that. You're a human. You're not a machine. As long as you're not forgiving yourself for not doing it every day.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
At some point, you're going to go, I'm in a bit of a rut here. I need something to get me going again. So, again, self-compassion, big one. I learned a lot about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. These are some powerful, powerful, powerful realizations. And I want to go back to the counseling, just to commend you on doing the work, because what you said is it feels good to vent for an hour and then go home, but what makes the difference is your actions, and that's where cognitive behavioral therapy is so powerful. And I actually I'm working towards my registered professional counselor, and that's my area of interest for that
Yes.
exact reason. Because I just feel that we can know ourselves to the back and front, but what makes the difference is taking the actions, exposing yourself to those experiences, and getting that healing by doing things that are hard and scary. And so well done on that, and then to further that, to have the self-compassion that is needed when healing is a non-linear process where you
Yeah.
slip up and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's the crux of it. The crux of it is there's words, there's talk. What does the practical action look like? Now, you can read books on it, you can talk to people, you can listen to podcasts, you can do all sorts of things. But in my life, in my situation, in my day, what actual physical, tactile things, steps can I do to make progress? And motherhood statements, nice words, things like that are all good. But they've got to be backed by some process, some goal, something I need to achieve by next week, by next appointment, or I'll give myself a month to do that. The real difficulty is you're doing this at sometimes the lowest ebb in your life, where your energy levels are zero, your confidence is down, you cannot see any light at the end of the tunnel, you cannot find any drive. So how it was for me, because I was just stripped back to nothing. I was a shell.
Mm-hmm.
So baby steps. I had little goals. Okay, today I'm going to walk around the block and I'm going to eat a proper meal, even if I don't feel like it. And I have an appointment in 4 days with the psych. So I can sleep, I can eat, I can walk, and then in 3 days at 10 a.m., I'm in that office with that person. So that was I'll get to 3 days, get to there. Then I'd go, we'd talk, I'd feel good. Someone's listening to me, someone's trying to understand. They give me a little thing to do. I want you to do a thought diary. If I'm having nightmares, keep a record. Name them, things like this. Okay, there's a little task. So I concentrate on that for a week. Yeah. Another thing, I was getting paid, so because it was work related. Now a lot of people don't have that. They've got the pressure. I've got to get back to work.
Right.
So I had a lot of things fall in, but I'm not making excuses for other people too. If you're not well, it's not going to work. So you've got to prioritise this. You've got to say to yourself, for my family, for my relationships, for my work, for my career, for my future, I've got to be functioning. I've got to be operating And that's where it can be really empowering to tell people what's happening. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you turn on media now, everyone's got issues. Everyone's talking about this stuff. So there's a lot of white noise. And sometimes you look at things and go, really? Have you got severe anxiety because of, your shoes are clashing with your handbag? So the language that's used in a lot of popular culture and that really dilutes serious mental health discussion. I'm talking about people with serious, proper, real mental health issues that need to get their life back on track.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So finding what is actually going on, being honest with yourself. Am I feeling this way because outside pressures are telling me I feel this way, or am I feeling this way because of trauma and how I respond to that trauma? So there's a lot of honesty. You've got to be prepared to say, I got PTSD. That was so liberating and disarming for me. A lot of people talk around it. Oh, he's off, he's having a bit of spell. He hit the wall, but what does that mean? He's got PTSD. That's what it means.
Right.
I like the pregnant as an example. Back in the day when it was, you couldn't talk about women being, you couldn't use the word pregnant and they'd had sex to get pregnant. They use cute little terms like she's in the family way, or she's with child,
Yeah.
Or we can't say menstruation. It's got to be the period, or why can we be direct? That's the first thing. I have PTSD, right? That just drops the barriers because people want to probe. What's he saying? Has he got PTSD, or is he just saying he's having a break from work? Oh, I think he's up. Well, it just gets rid of that. It just clears it off the table. You're up front, bang, that's what I've got. If guys have a physical injury, football, I tore a hamstring, I'm off for 6 weeks. Yeah, I've got to go and get hyperbaric chamber and chiro and physio. People happily talk about that because there's no stigma around it. You can conceptualize that. But with mental health, it's, oh my God, we can't talk about that. So that blocks honest conversations about what's going on. What's the cause of the problem? What type of character am I? What am I doing to contribute this? How can I change that? Okay, what's the best way for me to change that? Who can help me change that? Am I going to commit to it? Am I serious about this? So the conversation's got to start from an honest point of view. And that starts with yourself, being honest about what's going on. Am I imagining this? Am I building this up? Am I really feeling this? And am I really serious about fixing it? So, honesty is huge in the process.
Right. That's the key question. Am I really serious about fixing it? You've given us some really great, practical, tangible, and usable tools for mental health and how, moving forward we can begin to heal ourselves, whether it be from a breakdown or preventatively. I'm curious, have you thought about like motivational speaking or something like that? Because I see so much clarity in what you're saying. I could see you moving on to, now you've learned a lot about yourself, now moving on to like paying it forward even more so.
I've been offered to do that, and I have spoken in certain forums. Going to what motivates people and helping yourself. I think for me, I prefer people to put myself out there and people to come and ask me, because I know if someone's coming to me, they're seeking it. I think if someone stands up on a stage and presents to a group, you're going to have 80% of people going, can't relate to this. This guy's been a fireman. He's been to 10,000 incidents. I've got PTSD because, I've had an argument with my neighbour and they've threatened me or something. It's totally... So I think people got to, I put it out there, people got to see what my experience is, what my attitude towards it is. And if there's a connection there between what I'm talking about and how they might feel, then I think that's a valuable use of my time. I think there's a lot of people that stand up on stages and talk in general terms. But as I said at the start of the conversation, it's very, very personal. It's very, very unique.
Yes.
How you feel. So I'd rather be more targeted, I think, at people that say, me talking about being positive and glass half full and that's not going to work for a lot of people. And I'm not that type of character. So his journey is not going to be relevant to me. So people who feel as though there's something similar in what I'm saying and how I've gone about it, to think that maybe that's for them, they're the people I'm happy to talk to. And one-on-one's good too, because it breaks down those barriers. They can ask very specific and very personal questions, and often they'll relay those stories to you one-on-one rather than in a group. So I did a course. So I was the first emergency services worker in Australia to, and this gets down to specifics again, but most major organisations will have a corporate type counselling service. It's the way of the world. Most of them are geared towards the corporate sector because large organisations, big numbers of staff, and this is without diminishing any of those stresses and things that people experience, you can categorise them into quite common type issues that they deal with. So their structures are set up around dealing with most of the problems that they encounter in those environments. Military, different. Emergency services, different. Within the emergency services, police, different. Ambulance, different. Fire brigade, different. Paramedics. So finding something specifically that deals with your work practice is very difficult. So over the years we had access to military things, but they didn't get what we did. They didn't get our exposures. Right. PTSD from a military officer might come. He's been to a village in a foreign country and had the worst day of his life and seen 100 people killed. One exposure, massive trauma. Mine, cumulative. Yes, there's a connection between the events that triggered me, that set me off. 4 or 5 similar in a period of time that I emotionally connected with. That was me. Who can deal with that? Well, that's where you've got to find your treating professional that can conceptualise that. There's a bit of a fascination with the type of work we do. So sometimes they've seen a TV show and think that's what firemen do, and you don't want to have to be explaining those operational details and those things to educate your treater on the work. You want somebody who can understand the responses that you've had to these abnormal events, your normal responses, and then apply an intervention to it, a medical, scientific process of repair. So that's going to fit what we're trying to deal with here for you. So where I was going with that, I was the first to be introduced to an arts program, which is arts for recovery, resilience, teamwork and skills, which was at great expense. And this is where defence is good because they've got massive budgets. They take people offline and you do a 4-week full-time live-in course with arts mentors. So this is what I've been itching to get to, is a creative outlet, something that I'm a huge believer in. So we go into this course, you have a day, an orientation day, and they show you the different strengths. So you can do visual arts, painting and drawing, photography, performance, so acting, things like that, music, and creative writing. And these are subject matter experts. These are professors, eminent artists. One of the photographers there had an Order of Australia medal. These were big wheels in the artistic community in Australia, paid by the military to this course, supported by counsellors, professionals, things like that. It was amazing. And I discovered that I loved painting and drawing.
Okay. Something you didn't know about yourself previously, or?
I enjoyed it at school, but again, I'd forgotten about it. I'd gotten busy. Life got in the way. And I loved sport. Any spare time I had, I was playing sport. I'd doodle on the notepad at work, but that wasn't. So here I am. This is a year after I got unwell. A work colleague was ex-military. And he had a connection with somebody and he said, "Would you like to try this?" What was the first word I said? No. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, no, no. Oh, no. Not for
Yeah.
me. And he goes, "Think about it." All right, okay. About a week later, he comes back and goes, "You thought about that?" He gave me a little bit more of an explanation. I said, "You know what? I'll try it." That was transformative. It really was. Yeah, because I'm going through, I'm looking at the science. What do I need to do? Change my medications. What am I doing with CBT? All very technical, all very.
Hmm.
And then I said, "Oh, what are people going to think of me? I'm going to this airy fairy arts course. What's that going to do for me? What am I going to do? Macrame and weave baskets and throw balls to each other and pop balloons and hug each other and a full. What is this?
Right.
It was so disarming. I went there and it was day one. I just clicked, and I'm thinking, these people are painting, or these people doing music for the sheer enjoyment of it. They're not there to do it to make money. They're not there. They're not worried about what other people think of it. They're doing it for themselves, and they're expressing themselves. They're creating something. They're giving something off. And when I looked at my career, mine's process. Mine's train,
Mhm.
respond, report, repeat. I don't have anything to show for my 35 years career. I've got an old battered helmet, a couple of medals, but it's all memories. It's all in here, and my colleagues, friends. Somebody builds a house, you drive past it in 40 years' time. I built that house. I have something to show for it. I had nothing to show for things that I did. So the creative outlet gave me space, cuts out the white noise. You hear about people when they're running, for example, being in the zone,
Mm.
to the exclusion of everything else. It's just me and my body and the road I'm running. Everything else just goes out of my head. Creative expressions like that. As soon as I picked up a paintbrush, as soon as I picked up the pencil, I'm focused, I'm doing something. It's taking me where it wants to take me, and I'm in it. And I'm not thinking about other stuff. From that, I did some nice pictures and they do an exhibition. So they displayed it, they put things, and people came and saw my exhibition. I'm now involved in another community. Oh, there's a host community, people interested in what I'm doing. It's not my work, it's not my family. It's about me expressing myself.
Yeah.
Then when I go traveling, I'd go and look at galleries. I'd meet other artists. I'd be in other communities. And that's just from painting and drawing. Musicians were doing the same. Next thing, they're in a music shop, they're buying a guitar. Creative writers, oh, I like this pencil. I like writing. Now I can get a nice computer to do my writing on and get this editing suite. It just opened these doors and light came in. So we talk about eating well, good mental health, physical, is about good practices. Physical exercise is really good. That's established.
Mhm.
The endorphins, things like that. Eating healthy eating practices, things like that. Creative outlet. That's the other pillar. Have a creative outlet. Just for you, just for fun, just for pleasure. Don't care what anyone thinks about how bad you sound or how awful your paintings are, or how terrible that pottery mug is. It's for you,
Mm.
and it's for fun. And when you come at it from that angle, that can lead to other things. People go, I really like. I started doing commissioned drawings and paintings. People go, can you draw this for me? I'll pay you to do that. I auctioned one of my paintings. That is a byproduct of it. It wasn't the goal. And it flows from the joy of you doing it, not from the necessity, not from, I need to do this for money, I need to do this to put a roof over my head. I'm doing this for me because I enjoy it. And if a byproduct of that is somebody else enjoys it and likes it, and they want to ask you about it. And some people that I went through the course with, make nice side hustles out of, financially. It wasn't an issue for me, but it's just amazing where these things lead. Again, all by saying yes instead of no. So that was the big
Right.
turning point for me.
Yeah, to circle
The
back to
arts
that
course.
moment. Yeah. I'll give it a try. Okay. I think that that's a really excellent kind of final tip, bonus tip. And it sounds to me like I'm hearing that creative outlet, number one, is absolutely huge. One thing for just you. And I'm also hearing community, and I'm also hearing something that is meditative. Those are
Massive.
the things. Yeah, those are the things I'm
Community is
hearing
huge.
from what you get from what
Community
you've
is huge.
established.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are
Yes.
social beings. We need each other. No man is an island, and
Mm-hmm.
as much as we sometimes like our own company and feel like people are the worst things ever, we do need each other at a very
Certainly.
basic, primal level. How we find that for ourselves, how it's comfortable, but it is essential. That's social. That's socializing, saying yes to a coffee, a chat. It might feel like it has no purpose or direction, but it's fulfilling. You make that connection. That's a thing to push yourself to do, really. And the other thing you have to do is pick up the phone, because if people wait for it to come to you, if you have that
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, I haven't spoken to someone for a while, pick the phone up and do it. Yes, it mightn't work time wise, it mightn't be convenient, but that's a practical step you can take. You pick up the phone, you phone somebody, you organise a coffee date, you organise a catch up, you have a phone conversation with someone you haven't spoken to for a while, and keep pushing yourself to do it. Because there's something in talking to each other, being with each other, that fulfills us. I don't know what the scientific basis is, other
Yeah,
than we need it. So
we do.
again, that's something you can just do, but for
Amazing.
free.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna go back through this and write these points down because they are fantastic. And I'm
Oh,
sure
thank
that,
you.
somebody listening, thank you. Somebody listening is gonna get so much out of this and really, walk away going like, I've got some tools, I've got some tips. And,
Yeah,
in story, we always gain here or there. But in this conversation, we've also been able to get some practical tools. So thank you so much for sharing those with us while telling story.
my pleasure, Christine.
Yeah, excellent. Is there any final thoughts that you wanted to leave with the listener, or maybe some advice that you might give to somebody that is maybe not quite dealing with the things that they should be dealing with, and kind of getting into a bit of a habit of just kind of pressing it down?
I think as we started, and I've mentioned a few times through here, just try and do something really simple. Try to make yourself and find yourself saying yes more than you say no, and,
Okay.
and working from there, just at the most basic level. If you open your mouth and you hear the word no beginning, try and change it to yes and see what that does for you. Just try it. You've got nothing to lose.
Perfect. Perfect. That is a great addition. So thank you so much, Shawn, for coming and for taking the time out of your day, all the way in Australia, to have this conversation with us and to spread more joy.
Good on you, Christine. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this last episode, then consider rating the podcast. Those few seconds that it takes makes a huge difference. Also, if you are interested in mentorship, transformational programs, or reading the book Unbroken, Rising Above, Thriving Within, then take a look at the show notes for all the resources and links. Always remember, you can overcome any obstacle. Let's do this together.